some imperialist theft going on here by Britain, by the UK towards Venezuela. It's from New York Times. I'll link it in the description box down below. Nicolas Maduro can't sell Venezuelan gold at Bank of England court rules. It would be unlawful to allow Mr. Maduro, the president of Venezuela, democratically elected, mind you, to access the gold, a British High Court judge said, because Britain's government recognizes his Juan Guaido as Venezuela's rightful leader. I mean, just fucking think about that for a sec. Maduro was elected, democratically elected, the president of Venezuela. Juan Guaido was not. He is the puppet of the US and these other Western European imperialist, capitalist powers who want to prop up Juan Guaido, the puppet, who was a very, very obscure figure within Venezuelan politics before the US government decided that they wanted to make him the leader of Venezuela because Nicolas Maduro, is a leftist, has socialist leanings, actually wants to, make the Venezuelan economy, the society work for the working people there, while Juan Guaido would open it up to these, financial interests so the people and the resources of Venezuela could be exploited. And the British High Court, again, is just allowing this fucking imperial theft to take place, and it's fucking disgusting. I mean, for fuck's sake. All solidarity with the Maduro regime against these just disgusting capitalist imperial powers that are trying to destabilize his government in whatever way possible, and all solidarity with the working people of Venezuela. A British judge ruled on Thursday that President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela cannot access to 1.8 billion in gold in the Bank of England vault because Britain does not recognize him as leader of the suffering country, and it's largely a suffering country because of the draconian economic warfare that has been waged against them by the U.S. government. The sanctions are a form of warfare, and tens of thousands of people have died as a result of that. That blood is on the Trump administration's hands, and it's disgusting. Those are war crimes. And fuck Britain, fuck Canada, fuck all these other Western countries propping up Guaido. Again, Maduro is the democratically elected president of Venezuela, not Juan Guaido, not the U.S. and these other fucking imperial countries' puppet. It's disgusting. Like many Western countries, including the U.S., the British government has unequivocally recognized the opposition leader Juan Guaido as the country's interim president. A High Court judge in London, Nigel Terr, wrote in his ruling, adding that it was therefore unlawful to give. It's fucking unlawful to not give them the gold. Nicolas Maduro is the democratically elected leader. You fucking imperialist piece of shit judge. I mean, Jesus Christ. The decision was the latest blow to Mr. Maduro in his efforts to revive an economy that has been in free fall for years, battered by international sanctions, low oil prices, corruption, and now the coronavirus. Venezuelan government has struggled to tackle the pandemic with the once robust healthcare system now depleted of its most basic needs. And you would think maybe that's something to do with the fucking sanctions. You fucking rag New York Times. The Central Bank of Venezuela had sought access to the gold reserves in Britain, prompting a legal fight over who had the authority to seek the release. Mr. Juan Guaido, officially the head of the Venezuela National Assembly, or Mr. Maduro's government. Venezuela has long stored gold reserves at the Bank of England, which has the world's second largest cache of gold behind the New York Federal Reserve. Mr. Maduro's government said earlier this year that the funds raised from selling the equivalent 1 billion of Venezuelan gold reserves would be routed through the United Nations Development Program to import food and medicine. So by this High Court in England ruling this just completely ridiculous, illegal, immoral, and ethical ruling, they're literally taking food and medicine out of people's fucking mouths in Venezuela that has already been, again, just decimated by this draconian economic warfare that the U.S. is waging with these illegal and totally disgusting and immoral sanctions. It's so fucked. It's so fucked. Sanctions have helped crush the Venezuelan economy, but food and medical supplies and humanitarian efforts are exempt from British sanctions on the country. Mr. Guaido's team, again, just a puppet for these Western imperial powers, has urged the British government not to transfer the gold to the Bank of Venezuela since early 2019, argued that the money would be squandered on corruption and cronyism. You literally see they're trying to use it for fucking food and medicine. Yeah, and then again, the New York Times, more often than not, how they paint stuff is they're basically just the stenographers, for the U.S. government, for the military-industrial complex, and basically just parrot whatever narrative they're getting from either one of those. Yeah, it's fuck that British court, fuck the United States government, fuck Canada, fuck any of these other governments that recognize Juan Guaido as leader. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Mr. Maduro claimed to have won re-election in 2018. It it was a legitimate election. It should say Mr. Maduro won re-election in 2018. You see the kind of doubt they're trying to sow there. That's the so-called paper of record, the New York Times, basically parodying U.S. State Department fucking talking points right there. It's fucking ridiculous. And again, the only reason that they're propping up Guaido because he would do the bidding of these countries, of these multinational corporations, so they would open up the Venezuelan economy to be, exploited, privatization, destroying the environment, exploiting the workers, and Nicolas Maduro actually stands up for the people of Venezuela. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Yeah, Sarash Zaiwala, a lawyer representing the Venezuelan bank, said in a statement that the ruling entirely ignores the reality of the situation on the ground and it would appeal the decision. Good. Mr. Maduro's government is in complete control of Venezuela and its administrative institutions, and only it can ensure the distribution of humanitarian relief and medical supplies needed to combat the coronavirus pandemic. I mean, for fuck's sake, you saw that ridiculous little coup attempt by this former, I think they were U.S. Green Berets, Army Rangers, whatever, and and as soon as they got on shore in their little boat, they were taken into custody because it was such a ridiculous attempt to try to overthrow the democratically elected government of Nicolas Maduro. Again, democratically elected. Juan Guaido, the U.S. puppet, was never elected to that position. Yeah, fuck Guaido, fuck all these Western countries. It's ridiculous. And again, people on the left always need to be standing on the right side of history. They need to be anti-imperialist, so that means standing against the Juan Guaido puppet regime and the efforts by the U.S., the British, Canada, and these other so-called Western powers and leaders to prop up Guaido over the democratically elected leader of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and calling out those sanctions for what they are, forms of economic warfare that are wreaking havoc on the most vulnerable and marginalized within Venezuela. That's sick, that's disgusting, it's illegal, immoral, unethical, and we all need to be calling that shit out. It's ridiculous. The U.S. government is a fucking rogue state that will do anything to try to protect its imperial capitalist, interest, and this is just another example of that. And England, UK court siding with them on this as well. It's disgusting. It's disgusting.